Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Unit Masters Cohort 5. We are now in week 4. Today we have as our live speaker and mentor, we have Roxana. And Roxana is the MD at Launchpool. She's working at the Web3 Techstars Accelerator in London, or actually she helped set it up. And she's a privacy advocate, and she is a Tedx speaker, and she has a lot of beautiful information about, how do you actually navigate, sort through this jungle of different fundraising methods in the crypto blockchain world. And also Roxana has been in the industry for more than a decade, so she can also share about her journey and how the industry has evolved, and she's open to answer any questions you may have. So for that, you can use the chat, and then we'll read out some of the questions and ask Roxana to share her experience with us. Welcome, Roxana. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I think we mentioned that the way we will do this is we'll just take breaks in between, so I don't rant for like 30 minutes, and then you can ask me questions if there's anything. I think this is the best way. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be able to talk a bit about my journey and also the things that we do at Launchpool. Part of our future of fundraising, and I hope that you'll find valuable information after the presentation today, and that we'll find ways to keep in touch. So a bit about myself. I started as a freelancer back in 2008, and I built my digital business from there. In 2012, I joined the ambassador program, which was basically a country representative program for a nice freelancing platform called elance.com back in the days. And they later on became, they did a merger and they became Upwork. So I stayed with them until 2018 for 6 years. And we built products and we optimized the communities around our freelance marketplaces. And yeah, I think over the course of 6 years, just in Romania, I built a community of 30,000 professionals, and a lot of them did become full-time freelancers. So they moved away from the corporate world and the 9-to-5 the 9-to-5 schedule. And I was telling Yip the other day that one of the things that I realized just talking to a lot of people is that they didn't really need more money, but they wanted more freedom to organize their time. So they would be more productive if they could fragment their time and work more intensely with clients than working in an office 24/7, the 9-to-5 classic stuff. So being with them and working with a lot of people, even way back before there was no such thing as a community manager or a head of community or anything, it really opened up this opportunity to work closely with people and train them and see them shift their life towards the better, I think. So it was an interesting journey for me, and that made me realize just how important being digital is, being a digital nomad, and the digital economy, so to speak, which again, that was not a term back in the day. Financial freedom was not a term, but I'm very happy to go, fast forward almost 10 years afterwards to see how the space has changed and, the opportunities that we get with Bitcoin and crypto. Do you have any questions so far?
I think we are ready to just listen
cool.
to your sharing, and then we'll build on that.
Perfect. So I'll just walk you a bit through what we do at Launchpool and kind of the Launchpool ecosystem. It's gonna work like this. Maybe I could just. Okay, if you can see my full screen, then. So one of the things that we do at Launchpool, the ethos that we have as an ecosystem is that we select, we incubate, accelerate, and launch And for us, there are two major components. There's the founders and the startups, and then there's the community. So we have 3 programs. We have Launchpool Labs. I'm the managing director of Launchpool Labs. So this is a program where we take projects that are in ideation or prototype, and we help them build their MVP, their minimum viable product, and their minimum viable community. I'll talk a bit more about this later. And then there's our Launchable Web3 Techstars Accelerator, which is more for advanced scale-up businesses. So let's say you opened up a business, it's going well, you want to take it to another market, you want to scale, then this is the type of accelerator that would be great for you. And Techstars actually has this founder first ethos. So it's a very interesting ecosystem. You have founders that, they build amazing products, but you also have an amazing mentors network that really supports. And it's all based on volunteer work. So they support the projects and they take them to a level of success. And then we have Launchpool, which is the pre-IDO platform. And it's a very special platform because it's one of the few where people can invest and they have a guaranteed allocation. So we have an interesting model there that benefits the small retail investor and also benefits the community. So it's very community centric. And as just as a startup ourselves, we have this process, this roadmap that we go through. So we started with what we call fair launch, and
Roxana,
then
it's just one thing. We're seeing the second slide of your presentation. Is that also what you are seeing?
The roadmap?
No, we are only on slide 2, where we just see select, incubate, accelerate, launch.
Do you see it now?
Yeah, now we see the
roadmap. Okay. So I'll just stick to that then. Yeah, Linux, there's an issue with that. So as a startup ourselves, we have this this roadmap and these processes that come in place. So we started as a community project, and then we went through launching the incubator, and later on next year we have the accelerator. So we're very happy to say that we're here to stay, and we've seen very positive responses from the crypto community in this sense. A bit about Launchpool Labs, which is my baby. It's a 3 months incubation program where we incubate 3 to 6 projects per cohort. So a cohort is a group of projects. And we just started our first cohort. We think that this is a new opportunities for teams, builders, universities, and dev hubs. So we're very happy to say that we've seen very positive responses from a couple of universities around the world, including in Canada and in the UK. And we're very happy that we will work together on the talent development part, so that we give students the opportunity to have internships in some of the projects that we incubate. And they witness how we work as a technology company. We also do hackathons, and then obviously we allow students to kind of capitalize on their best skills, and then leave their footmark, leave their fingerprint in all of these projects that we incubate. So the way we do it is we bring the community a new opportunity to get involved in what we say is shaping the future. So they can do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's heavily involved in crypto, but there is a demand for also technical skills, but also soft skills. So that means, let's say technical skills is obviously blockchain, knowing programming languages like Rust and Solidity and Python and so on. But there's also a need for soft skills, which are, for example, public speaking, design, writing, illustrations, marketing, community management, and so on. So I like to say that our industry is a place where anyone can get a gig going where they can capitalize on their skills and use it. And there's a place for everyone here. Now with Launchable Labs, as I said, we have different programs. So there's a lab studio. This is the first month where we just focus on the setup and project scoping and strategy and setting up the companies. Then there's Launch Labs MVP. So we develop their minimum viable community and their minimum viable product. And then there's another component with the universities, which is called lab research, that focuses on research and talent nurturing lab. And I hope to see more young talent joining the industry here. And obviously, if you want to get in touch with me, specifically for Launchable Labs, this is how you get a hold of me. Or you can just ping me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm pretty public. Now, a lot about the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator. This is a different program. It's in partnership with Techstars and Alphabet Fund. It's a 13-week accelerator program where we pick 10 finalists. We have 80 mentors, and we work closely from March to June 2022, ideally in London, but also virtually if COVID doesn't allow us. And this program, at the end of it, there will be a demo day where every single project, part of the 10 finalists will showcase where they are, and we'll use this as a way to pitch and get more funding for their startup. It's very interesting, but with Techstars, as I said, they're very founder first. So it's more like they invest in founders than in the business ideas themselves, in a way that, for example, if you're a founder, you have an excellent background, you have excellent talent and vision, but you may be not benefiting your own product with that kind of vision, then Techstars could actually mentor and shape your product or your business idea so that it fits, it aligns with your personality and with where you are as an entrepreneur. I think it's an amazing program. I'm very happy to be involved in it. As I said, this accelerator will work with startups across the crypto ecosystem, and it's going to be chain agnostic. So that doesn't mean we will work with just one protocol, but we would be looking to work with all of the protocols. And obviously, being founder first means that we prioritize the technical needs of the founders for their products and their services. So we will try to match them with the right protocols, for example, the right technology support. If you want to learn more about it, there's a website, techstars.com/accelerator/launchpool-web3, where you can find more. The contact person for this is Laura Walsh, my coworker and friend. She's the partner liaison, and I'm the marketing liaison in this, so I handle more the marketing and the support side. About Launchpool itself, as I said, it's a pre-IDO platform, and it's a very interesting space that we entered, where you have a pre-IDO is something that happens before an initial DEX offering. So what we do is projects come to us and they say, well, we're raising private seed, or we are raising private rounds, round 1 or round 2, and so we would like to give the same terms and conditions that we typically give to a fund or an investment company. We'd like to give the same terms and conditions to the community. So the community, the retail investor community that we have, which counts around 35,000 people, they get access to the same terms. So this means the same prices, the same vesting terms as a fund would get. And this is this is very interesting because like going through the whole ICO wave in 2017, 2018, we saw that retail investors were the last ones to get involved in something and get access to a deal. So they were always kind of at the end of the bargain, and they were getting not the worst, but close to the poor, let's say the poor offerings. A lot of the times the big funds and the syndicates that the groups of investors were dumping on retail. And it was very hard to make a profit from your investment. So retail was always at a loss. So what Launchpool did was kind of re-engineer the game, where why not have the retail investors get the same terms and conditions as the fund, get the same vesting terms. So there's less opportunity for a pump and dump. There's less flipping of the coin on different exchanges and less dumping on retail. And we've seen very positive response to this. We've had over 15 projects that launched on Launchpool. Raises are typically between 100 and 100K, which was more in the beginning. Lately, most of the projects want to raise 250K to 400, 500K. So they're getting close to 500,000 from retail investors. And we have over 10,000 KYC users in order to retain the regulatory compliance aspect, because this is very important. When you're fundraising in crypto, you need to take into account the regulatory landscape. Otherwise, it will come bite you back. Let's say after you've launched, you know, when you're in that spot where your product is doing well and you're getting adoption and you're getting good signaling from the market, and then regulations come in and they can kill your product. So it's better to look for regulatory compliant ways to raise money in the beginning, so that you don't have to deal with regulations afterwards. And this is how we support projects. We make sure that we only allow retail investors from the jurisdictions they are okay with to fundraise from. And some of the highlights, like I said, we offer for the community. The community is the core of Launchpool. We offer guaranteed allocations, and this is done through a very interesting mechanism of staking. So, for example, you stake the token of our platform, which is called the L pool token. You stake it into different pools that are available for fundraising, and then you generate a percentage of the allocation for that pool. For example, right now we have 2 pools that are available. One is a pool where you could stake a maximum of 300 L pool, and you get 2/3 of the allocation. So it's very retail friendly. And then you have a whale pool where you can stake unlimited L pool, and then you generate 1/3 of the allocation for that pool. And it's guaranteed by the token, so that all you have to do at the end of the staking period is just make sure that you don't miss the payment window. And that's it. Then you abide to a vesting schedule. And all you have to do is make sure that you claim according to that vesting schedule, and that's it. You have your investment.
Roxana, may I just jump in here really quick?
Yeah.
Maybe you can also explain, like in a short and easy to understand way, how this liquidity mining works, or what are pools like, you know, in that sense, because even this concept of pooling might be new to some of our audience here.
So every DEX, every decentralized exchange, and there are more types of DEXs. One is the classic DEX with bids and asks, something like Ether Delta, for example. And then there's AMM DEXs, which are automated market making, something like Bancor, Uniswap. I think you're very familiar with Uniswap. Most of the world is now. So on a bids and asks, DEX, you don't need liquidity pools. But on a AMM DEX, you need liquidity pools because these ensure that there's always liquidity available for your token. So, for example, what you can do is your smart contract can be linked to the smart contract of that DEX. So then your, let's say, your users, your community can stake, and then they constantly provide liquidity for that pool that belongs to the project. I think this is the simplest way to explain it without going too technical. And it's a great way of, so you don't rely on centralized exchanges or centralized authorities that provide the liquidity. For example, if you go to Kraken or Coinbase, they are, so to say, they're custodians. So they are in charge of that liquidity. They will trade on behalf of you. And then there's the traders that obviously they do the bidding and asking for the price. Whereas on a DEX, the things are a bit, on a AMM DEX, things are a bit different. I think, yeah, that's about it. I don't want to go into the technical details. Any other questions, Yip?
Okay, so maybe we can step back a little bit and look at the entire market ecosystem.
Okay.
You know, what have been the major changes you've seen, and what is there, you know, the next big developments in your point of view regarding the fundraising for crypto projects and projects in general? You know, what does this innovation bring to the market now?
So if we go back, depending how further back you want to go, but let's say, let's not go to when Bitcoin was launched. Let's go closer to when some of the first kind of ICOs popped up, which was 2015, I think. Most of the ICOs that were done in 2015 were, they had interesting fundraising mechanisms. For example, if I remember correctly, NEM had these shares that you could buy for a very small amount. I don't know if they raised more than 20, 40K back then in order to launch NEM. Ethereum did, with the Ethereum Foundation, they did something else. Initially, the plan was for a DAO, and then the DAO hack happened. But what we're seeing, so along the years, obviously, I think people, especially founders, have become extremely greedy because it's fairly easy to raise if you have a good project and a good team, and if you're using the right protocols, because obviously the crypto space has become political. So every protocol wants to have companies and teams building on their protocol and their tech stack. And even Uniswap, for example, they would like to have developers build on the Uniswap protocol. So there's interest here. There's bigger developer mindshare, which means there's a support level on the technical side, and nothing can really beat the let's say the mindshare of Ethereum, for example, the developer mindshare in Ethereum. And it's maybe one of the sole reasons that Ethereum is so big right now. It's because there are a lot of developers building on Ethereum. A lot of the DeFi is happening on Ethereum. Obviously, there was also the 2017, 2018 ICO bubble, and it was fairly easy to deploy a token on Ethereum. So the easier it is to build on a protocol, I think the more it leads to maybe projects that are not really mature enough to fundraise, founders that are not in it for the technology, they're in it for the quick money. So it's kind of, it creates this little monster in the room that we don't really want to talk about most of the times. But as protocols get harder and harder to build on, and they're more rigid technologically, let's say, for example, look at Solana. Solana uses Rust. So Rust is not an easy programming language. So then, because there are fewer Rust developers compared to Solidity, there's more interest in actually building, let's say, more sustainable products, better products. And obviously they do get funded because it's Solana, and Solana is a hot protocol right now. But I think that the harder it is to build on a protocol, then the more you filter out the people that are in it just for the money. And then you can have more concise developer mindshare. So that means that there are fewer developers, but there's more interest in working together. And we see this also in the privacy space, for example, because while everything is open source in privacy, encryption itself and cryptography is pretty difficult. Up until maybe 10 years ago, the best cryptographers were just professors and academics and the cypherpunks. There were very, very little cryptographers. And even now, there are not many good core developers and core cryptographers out there. So I think this is something that changed. There's a movement towards, okay, do we want to make a protocol be super easy to develop on? Yes, we may want to do that if, for example, we want governments and institutions to build on it and have a Web3 infrastructure. But if it's building products that are not related, they're not features or services of institutions, but they're standalone products, then we want to have protocols that are more rigid to build on. And I think this is a positive change and shift that we're seeing. And you were talking about fundraising right now. Yeah, it's fairly easy to fundraise right now. If you have a good team, if you have a good product, if you're building on the right protocol, chances are that you will get 1.5 to 2 million fairly easy. Some of these protocols, they have VCs behind them. So it's more in line of, if those VCs, they like your vision and they trust your promises, so to speak, or what you're building, then they'll get involved, and then the whole foundation of each protocol will get involved and support you as well. So then it opens up to this community, because I think community is a very important aspect. Even if fundraising is easy, community is hard, because people migrate, people are fluid. They very rarely they will stick to the same preferences. So we are curious by nature, and that means if we find an interesting opportunity on the left, we will move from the right to the left in order to take it. So how do you get these people to stay with you and be a loyal community? That's where gamification matters. That's where human psychology matters. That's where you look at programs where you work with people, and the educational component is very important. You get to a point where you have a loyal base, which is the loyal community, and they become kind of like your unspoken ambassadors, because they're the ones constantly helping other newbies in the community, supporting them and so on. So it's a very interesting mechanism here. I don't think fundraising is enough. I think community is not just the present, but also the future. Because we are, as human beings, we are programmed to feel safe and at ease in a group of people than we are alone. We are social animals, yeah? So if you take this, which is very true, and you apply this into the product, and you make community part of your product, then there's going to be an interesting shift there, and you will see that that's going to keep your product going. That's what's going to stop you from shutting down your company, even if you don't get the funding that you want.
Amazing. One of our participants has asked, hey, you have a BA in psychology. How did you find your way from psychology to tech, Roxana?
I actually have a bachelor and a master's in psychology. But the thing is, I did not like the therapy part, the clinical psychology part. So from my first year of university, I joined the research program of my university for 5 years. So I ended up working in research and with a lot of data and using, I had to learn a bit of data science and Python and R as well for advanced statistics. So I sort of been drawn to the tech side, even if I studied psychology. It was an interesting university, and obviously it was interesting to study the human psychology part. But I basically stayed because we were doing a lot on the analytical part, on the data science. And we actually built some cool stuff like an IQ test for the Romanian population, occupational fatigue inventory. I worked with, it's interesting, this is maybe 2014, I worked with a client from Miami who was a criminal psychologist for the Miami police. And we worked, he gave me 20 years of data. They had this this personality inventory that would detect if you had if you had a tendency towards aggression and maybe kind of not just being aggressive physically, but the problem was these cadets at the police academy, they were given guns and they were shooting people. So it was very interesting to work with that kind of data and help them get to a point where he could actually use that that inventory, that battery of tests that we got. It was just a test that you would take, and it would tell you if you had a tendency towards aggression. And then if you did, they would study that more in depth and then decide if you qualify for a police academy or not. Rant over.
Thanks for sharing about the projects from the past. Maybe we can take that experience and bring it back to the future. So, you look at a lot of founders every day, you work with them, and actually you build the gig economy from from when it didn't even exist. Maybe you can share with us, what were your observations in terms of different traits or skills or so the more successful founders tend to have.
So one thing that I noticed is that there are two types of founders. There are founders that are pretty much introverts. So they don't like social gatherings. They don't like networking. They just, if for them, it would be ideal just to sit at home or in the office and code. And they would be completely happy with that. And then there are the founders that are, they're very outspoken. They're very social. They're very charismatic. They like being in a crowd. They like bathing in crowds, and they go to every single conference and they pitch their projects and they present it. And most of them have better luck with getting traditional VCs. But the thing that changed in crypto is that we stopped looking at how charismatic a founder is, and we started looking at what they're developing, their actual product. So we saw that in this sense, there were the community would encourage more the type that they would be in the chats every day, but then they would also code. So those are the two types that I found in terms of bubbly personality versus more introvert. Definitely more technical founders or co-founders, and less on let's say creative marketing background, although it's very needed. So when you're building a company, you need a combination. The co-founders or the people that are working the C-levels, they need to complement each other. So you have a very good CMO, for example, that's supporting the CEO. And if the CEO, for example, if the CEO is not comfortable speaking, then the CMO will take over and they will become the image of the company. Now, it's very important that every startup has a person people can relate with. So the personal identity and the business identity of the company matter very much. It's very hard for people to trust if you don't have a Twitter account, if you don't have a LinkedIn account, if you don't have brand consistency across these. So what I typically recommend is, for example, you're using the same photo that you have for Twitter and Telegram and LinkedIn, for example, so people can relate, using items that help you communicate better. So the hat is a brand itself, so it helps me communicate better, and people will recognize me. They may not recognize me without it, but they'll know, oh, Roxana, the girl with the hat. So it's very easy for them to remember. It's even easier to remember a branding item than it is to remember the name or the company. So if you need more information, for example, you go to a group and you say, hey, do you remember a founder? She had a hat or something like that. And then people will most likely remember it. So it's easier to find information about someone. Yeah, and I think it's less solopreneurs in this space and more team-focused founders. So you cannot build something without a team. If you are a solo founder, then you go through incubation and acceleration programs in order to find your team, and find that talent that you need in your team. So very few solopreneurs, a lot of product focused, very few are into services. And it's significantly harder to launch a product versus launching a service-based company. When you're launching a service-based company, you need to push on the marketing and sales and business development. Yeah, you need to have good salespeople that bring you clients. On the product side, you're building something for it to be used later on. So you may think you noticed, let's say, a need in the market, and you're building around your gut feeling that may be needed. Maybe you do a market analysis and then you find the information. But it's very, very hard because you're not just building the product. That product needs to be tested. That product needs to be brought to the market. That product needs to be used by people. It's very, very hard. A lot of the time, product companies need the services companies in order to facilitate the business flow and the marketing. So I think we have more product builders in this space than the marketing side. Obviously, there are a lot of marketing companies and services and community services and so on, which is great. Design and graphic design, which is very important. But I always found it harder to be a product founder than a services founder.
Where do you find, like, in the crypto space, the good talents if you're looking to build something, looking for co-founders? Where are they?
It's a good question. I think you find them in small groups. I think that the technical meetups were a good thing. It was even worth at the time, for example, to go to Bangkok or Kuala Lumpur just for a technical meetup, because you could find interesting people there. Right now, it's mostly groups. I think if you're a founder and you need a technical co-founder, the best thing that you can do is start a community, start talking about your product and your vision. So then if people like that, and don't be afraid to pull call to actions out there. So if you need people to help you in certain directions, it's always good to put a call to action and be transparent about it. Like we're doing now with Latin America ambassadors. It's always good to broadcast to your audience or your community that you are needing help in these areas. And it's very interesting, but the way communities are built is that even if they don't do it themselves, they could recommend you someone that is doing it. So they could bring in talent, dev talent, or just any kind of technical or soft skill based talent into your community and into your company. And I think you really cannot launch a company anymore without a community.
Very fair point. And what kind of solutions, services, or products are you currently seeing that are being developed in the market, and what do you expect to come, like, more in the 3 to 5 years?
Well, NFTs are interesting. There's a lot of rage and rave around NFTs right now. So I think as long as we can solve the issue with not, with NFTs, there are in-game NFTs, which are amazing, because I think one of the biggest pain points for gamers was that they could not move their skins from one game to another. And if they could, it was very hard to control, so it doesn't become money laundering, or you end up with fake items which cost. But we're seeing a lot of the kids and teenagers today, they like playing metaverse games. They like the idea of a metaverse. It's a digital space where you build, you build 3D, or you build your own space there. They're fascinated with this. Play to earn is very hot right now. So this gives an opportunity for gamers to earn good money out of it. Kind of like how it was at one point with Warcraft. There were a lot of people, a lot of gamers making good money with Warcraft. So now we're seeing, let's say, the crypto spin-off of Warcraft in play to earn games, where you make money every day just by playing the game. I think DeFi is still an experiment, but it's an interesting one. And we like to keep an eye on it just to see where it goes. Open finance will be big, and I think open finance is bigger than DeFi.
What's the difference?
Well, DeFi it's mostly related to crypto, whereas open finance, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be crypto. There's a huge component of privacy and private cash, which we're losing. This is a fight we're losing right now with traditional financial systems, because we see this move towards digital fiat. So that means with digital fiat, you're going to lose completely your privacy. Everything is trackable, and every transaction is recorded in a database. So banks and credit bureaus can gather that data, and they can basically decide, their algorithms will decide if you can get a loan or a mortgage or not. Whereas open finance, it will be, maybe you don't need to sell that kind of data to anyone or give that kind of data to anyone, and you just retain it. But you're still relatively free to use also the traditional, but also the crypto financial systems. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. There's a movement, for example, from banks. If let's say a city in a poorly developed area becomes middle class in 5 years, then that for banks is a great opportunity, because middle class are the biggest customers of the banking system. But open finance, what open finance does is it kind of takes you, it grants you access to open source. So no proprietary systems anymore, for example, that are held by IBM or Apple or so on, but everything is open source. being open source means that the code can be improved, the security of the systems can be improved. And most likely you don't have to pay to use that technology, but what you can do is you can contribute by running a node or by using a specific network that has transaction fees. So then with just your actions, just your usage of that network, you could give back to the founders or the teams behind different projects. But that's a huge experiment right now. And yeah, I don't know what we're seeing. There are good propositions. I still think it's a huge experiment, and I think at the end of the day we'll have Bitcoin and a couple of protocols that are going to service the space.
So we have a question from a community member. Isabel asks, could you speak about how privacy is enhanced through the use of blockchain technology? Maybe you can share even a good use case or something that excites you, Roxana. You're the expert in that.
So blockchains are not meant to be private. Blockchains are meant to be pseudonymous. So that means there's pseudonymity. There's anonymity to an extent where you allow, so you don't need to KYC, you don't need to know the identity of the people transacting or using using that blockchain. It still functions. Privacy is a different thing. Privacy, if we talk specifically about privacy, the only way that you can achieve privacy on blockchain is to have a second layer. So you need a Merkle tree. I'm going technical. You need a Merkle tree that basically retains specific information and then sends out specific information. So it's not a chain of entries. And then you need secondary layers that do swapping, that do coin joins. Yeah, that basically what they do is they reroute the transactions so you can't trace them back to the initial owner. So in this sense, there are very few projects, for example, in crypto that really achieve privacy. Monero's one. The issue with Monero is that they did it so well that if there's an inflation bug, you won't be able to find it until it's too late. And then there's, on Bitcoin, there are a few. Mercury wallet is building on Bitcoin state chains. So state chains are basically offline. You can just transact your private key, your UTXO on Bitcoin. There's coin joins happening on Bitcoin, so something like Wasabi, where you basically you enter, so multiple users enter a coin join, and then those coins are swapped. So when they come out, you can't track them back to the original owner. Ethereum has Tornado Cash, which is basically mixing and swapping. I know there's someone building a swap protocol on Solana right now. I think it's called Lava Cash. So there are a few. They're very hard to achieve. And there's always the regulatory backlash that could happen, because if governments decide one day that they won't, they'll put out regulations that say that centralized exchanges are not allowed to accept the coin joined coins, yeah, so tainted coins. I mean, those coins would be tainted because they're not liked by the government, and it's going to be very hard for you as a crypto investors, for example, to let's say get your money out, because you need fiat on-off ramping, and then at the end of the day, if you want to convert your crypto into fiat, yeah, you're going to do it through a centralized exchange. You're going to withdraw to your bank account. So,
All right.
yeah.
Thanks a lot for the explanation. If you want to look deeper, you can just do the research and share in the Telegram group with us. Roxana, maybe we just wrap it up for today. You
Yeah,
share a highlight of your 13 years journey
thank
with
you.
us. What made you very happy?
I think just going back and thinking, you know, this digital economy thing was just at the beginning in early 2000s, and then it's quite big now. That's a huge win, and we're moving forward. I think progress is good.
Okay, thanks very much. Any last word you want to share with the community before we go into 5 minutes of breakout rooms for networking and sharing reflections on what we just learned right now?
I think if you want to get into this space, if they're still new to crypto, there's so much educational material out there right now. It's insane how much there is, and the best way to get involved is just to become part of the industry.
Thanks a lot. And you have seen like in which way you can participate or get in touch with Roxana if you have any questions or want to participate or want to build the LATAM community with her for her. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm opening up now the networking rooms for those who want to just stay for a few minutes and get to know the other community members. Roxana, you're also very welcome to stay. Can also understand if you have to jump to the next meeting.
I have to go. I have a flight for London tomorrow, so it's just taking the COVID tests and all of that. Just insane what the world has become after COVID. So I'm going to take my leave, but thank you so much for having me. And I wish everyone good luck, and I hope to see you another time.